Hi, my name is Ray and welcome back to Ray's Economics Clue Book. Today, we'll be talking about the unemployment rate and expanding upon its measurements. So first of all, how is the unemployment rate measured? Well, basically, every month, the Bureau of Labor Statistics issues two types of surveys. A household survey of basically the households or the consumers, and the establishment survey of the employers from two sides of the economic perspective. And it's important to remember that every month they find and collect data from the previous month. So for instance, right now in August, they are finding data from July pertaining to unemployment. Now, of course, the current official unemployment rate and the narrowest unemployment rate is the U3 unemployment, and there are multiple ways to measure unemployment, and U3 is one of them. And basically, unemployment in this very specific definition is just people over the age of 16 in the labor force who are actively looking for a job but cannot find a job while looking for one during the last month, or more specifically, 4 weeks. And of course, when we mention the labor force, we always mention total employed plus unemployed individuals. But of course, there are other types of unemployment that are not measured in a very specific U3 measurement, but technically are still types of underutilization of labor that are similar to or basically unemployment. The first type is the marginally attached workers. Basically someone who wants a job, of course, but they've not looked for a job sometime in the prior month, although they have looked for a job in the prior 12 months, signaling that they still at least want a job. However, these people are not counted as unemployed because they, in the last 4 weeks, are technically not actively searching for a job. Hence the term marginally attached, because they're not currently looking, but they have looked in the last 12 months. And of course, the subsets of marginally attached are discouraged workers, basically workers who, similarly speaking, basically workers who are, more generally speaking, have given up looking for a job. And of course, non-discouraged workers are people who still look for a job. And finally, there are, of course, underemployed workers who are actually technically employed, but they're still underutilized in their labor because they either work part-time when they could or want to work full-time, or they're working on posts that they're overqualified for, or they qualify for posts higher than the ones they're working for. For instance, say a computer science major having to work as a cashier because of no other economic options in his or her area. And that's, of course, an underutilization of his labor or her labor. So, of course, what are the more broad measures of unemployment? Well, we already mentioned U3, official unemployment rate, of course, is kind of controversial because it's so specific, and some people say it minimizes what the true unemployment is. U4 is slightly more broad. It's basically unemployed workers plus discouraged workers over the labor force, plus, of course, the new number, which is discouraged workers, which is always higher than U3. U5 becomes even more broad than U4 because it includes unemployed workers plus discouraged workers plus non-discouraged workers over the labor force plus all of that. And finally, the most broad, which includes underemployment, is U6, which is what we just mentioned in U5 plus underemployed over labor force plus all of that. Now, of course, we can expect that U6 is higher than U5, which is higher than U4, which is higher than U3. But how much higher are the different unemployment measurements from each other? Well, you might be surprised to know that U5 and U4 and U3 are generally quite close to each other. In the reality, U6 is the one that really separates from the rest. And for this reason, we can see that part-time unemployment, underemployment, or unemployment in being overqualified for a job is quite a large part of our labor force and our economy. So, for instance, in 2013, right here, up to 2013, we see that the official unemployment rate is around 6.7%, and then the U4 and U5 are slightly higher in the blue and pink. However, U6 shoots all the way up to around the 15 to 16% range, and there's a quite significant gap right here. So underemployment, as we can see, is a huge part of our labor force. Now, here's another way of looking at the graph from the last about 6 to 7 decades. And each shaded region, as you probably can infer, it represents a recession. So, of course, naturally speaking, the unemployment of all measurements would shoot up during recessions. However, as you might notice, it tends to lag a little. The unemployment tends to be a lagging indicator because it tends to go up after recessions already occurred or have a later response than some other metrics. As you can see here, the gray line right here is a U6 metric, and you can see the gray line is still quite higher, especially during recession, significantly higher than the U5, U4, and U3 metrics, which tend to be somewhat closer together. And right here we see one last measurement of the U.S. unemployment rate according to the official unemployment rate, and right now it's just under 4%. And you can see it fluctuates according to recessions and expansions. So finally, of course, we can all probably agree that unemployment is bad, not just for our standard of living, but just as importantly to our economy because of its wasting of labor resources. Because either we are underutilizing our labor resources, or frankly just not utilizing some labor that we could be utilizing to produce more. And so for those reasons, unemployment is very harmful to our economy, which makes sense considering that it shoots up during recessions and goes down during expansions. Thank you. See you next time.